Hi, everyone. So today we are going to continue with our lessons on factoring. And once again, we're revisiting the concept of factoring trinomials here. You've seen factoring trinomials before in the section right above. The difference this time is these are going to be trinomials that have leading coefficients. They have numbers here in front of the x squared. And so that is going to change the way we do things just a little bit. Because if you remember up in this section up above, and I don't have mine filled in here on this copy, but we were always able to start with parentheses that just had an x and an x, and then we could do x plus something or x minus something. Now we're going to have to take into consideration that those first two terms have to somehow multiply to make 2x squared instead of just multiplying to make x squared. I will tell you that when I learned to do these in school, we just did it through guess and check. So we just would start by saying, okay, so let's make this a 2x and an x. And then we would think of ways to multiply to make 4. And then you might have to play around with those terms a little bit to get that middle term to work out, because it's not as direct as just saying, oh, they need to add up to that number anymore because you've got this other 2 in play. But these could be done that way. Okay, and if you really want to see how to do it with guess and check, I can show it to you sometime. I'd be happy to work through that with you. But I'm going to show you a strategy today that will hopefully help you out and get you to the answer in a more direct way. So here's how we're going to start these. If there's a leading coefficient out front, we're going to take this number and multiply it by this number down here at the end. Okay, and I promise there's mathematical reasons for that. We'll dive into that another time. But so I'm going to go 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. And then what I want to think about is how could I multiply to make negative 8 and add to make that negative 7. So similar to what we did before, except now we're looking at the 2 and the 4 together. So let's see. Multiply to make negative 8, add to make negative 7. I could start making a list of all of the ways that we can multiply to negative 8, but it's going to work out to be 1 and negative 8, okay? Because 1 times negative 8 is negative 8, 1 plus negative 8 is negative 7. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rewrite my expression, but I'm going to put in let's see, I'm going to replace my negative 7x with a plus 1x and a minus 8x. Okay? So if you look at what I did here, this expression is now equivalent to this. I just broke that 7 into a 1 and an 8. Okay? Because 1 minus 8 would give me the negative 7. So now I'm going to use that new strategy that you should have just learned about, factoring by grouping. I'm going to take these two terms together, and I'm going to take these two terms together, and I'm going to look for the GCF of each one of those groups. So with 2x squared and 1x, what they have in common is an x. And what I would be left with here is a 2x and just a 1 here. Okay. Now over here, the negative 8 and the negative 4 share a negative 4 in common as a GCF. And if I take out a negative 4, now if I'm taking out the negative, that means that what's going to be left in here will be positive. So this will be a 2x. And then if I take negative 4 out of negative 4, I'll be left with a 1. And what you should notice at this point, and this should happen every single time as long as you do everything correctly, is now I'm left with twins. I'm left with these parentheses that match exactly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that out like it's a common factor. So I'm going to make this 2x plus 1 pulled out in front. And then I'm going to say what's left over. Well, what's left over would be x minus 4. So that's going to go in my second parenthesis here. And lo and behold, I've factored this thing. So if you were to FOIL your way back through this, 2x times 2x times x would give you the 2x squared. Okay. Here I would end up with a negative 8x plus 1x, which gives me negative 7x. And then 1 times negative 4 gives me negative 4. Okay, so if that was confusing to you, maybe pause the video right now and either back it up and rewatch it, or at least think through those steps to yourself. Look at what you have written on your paper, see if you can remember what we did, and then we'll dive into this next one. So remember, the very first step is always to take the A and the C, the numbers at beginning and end, and multiply them. So those multiply in this case to make 36. And what I'm looking for is some way to multiply to 36 and add to 20. And maybe you know it right off the top of your head. I'm going to just real quick make my list for 36, just in case you don't see it. 5 doesn't work, 6 and 6. So there's all my ways to multiply to 36. I want one of these combinations that will also add to make 20. So I'm going with 2 and 18. Okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to take that 20x out. I'm replacing this 20x with a 2x and an 18x. I'm breaking it into these two pieces. So 4x squared plus 2x plus 18x plus 9. By the way, it doesn't actually matter which way you put these in. Like I could have put the 18x here and the 2x here. What's going to end up happening is if you reverse them, if you do them in the opposite order, you're going to end up with like the opposite part of your equation in the parentheses, but your final answer will work out the same. So we'll go through one of those together, maybe in class once you've done a few of these, and I'll show you what I mean by that. That you could reverse the order and it might look different for a minute, but your final answer will still come out okay. Okay, so let's group these two, and let's group these two. Between 4x squared and 2x, they have a 2x in common. And then if I take the 2 out of the 4, I'm left with a 2, and I took out 1x, so I have an x here. And then if I take 2x out of 2x, I'm left with just a 1. Out of 18x and 9, they have a positive 9 in common. And so then if I take 9 out of 18x, I'm left with a 2x. Take 9 out of 9, I'm left with a 1. Once again, you'll notice I have matching parentheses here. So that means my final answer is going to look like 2x plus 1 as my GCF, and then 2x plus 9 as my leftovers. Okay. So what I was saying before is if I had switched and put the 18x here and the 2x here, what would have happened is the 2x plus 9 would have ended up in the parentheses here, and the 2x plus 1 would have ended up on the outside. But your two parentheses down here would still be exactly the same. So that's what I mean when I say it doesn't matter. Okay, let's try one more. This one is a lot larger number, but the process will still work. So 12 times negative 15 is negative 180, and we need something that's going to multiply to 180 and add to make 8. And because of the negative, I know I'm going to have one positive, one negative number. So when I say add to 8, really I mean subtract to 8. And maybe, I mean, this one, it should be at least a little bit obvious, so maybe some of you have already thought of it, but just in case, here's our list for 180. 1 times 180. 2 times 90. You can stop this, by the way, when you find the one that you're looking for, when you find the one that would make an 8. Let's see, this is 4 and, oh gosh, I think 36. That might not be right. Sorry, 45. 4 and 45. It's 5 and 36. 6 and 30. 7 does not go into 180. I don't believe 8 goes into 180. 9 works. 9 and 20. 10 and 18. 11 doesn't work, but 12 and 15. 13 doesn't work. 14 doesn't work. And then 15 is already on the list. So this is my entire list for 180. So let's look at that huge list and find one that is going to add up to negative 8 for us, or one that with a negative sign we could make add up to negative 8. And so the one I'm looking at here is the 10 and 18, because if I make the 18 negative, 10 and negative 18 would give me negative 8. Okay, so I'm going to type this in as 12x squared minus 18x plus 10x minus 15. And now let's look at what these two have in common. 12 and 18 share a 6 as a common factor, and then x squared and x, so I can take out an x. And so here I'd be left with a 2 and an x, and then minus a 3. So I can take a 6 out of 18 is 3, and then my x is gone. 10x and 15 share a 5. And then I'd be left with a 2x here and a negative 3 here. If I did everything correctly, this parenthesis should always match this parenthesis. But I always just kind of check that as I'm pulling the numbers out here, make sure that that actually worked out correctly. And then for my factors, my first factor will be that 2x minus 3 that they have in common. My second factor will be the 6x plus 5. So this is a really great example of like when guess and check would be difficult, because in order to do guess and check, you would have to think about all the different ways you could multiply to 12 to put numbers in front of the x's here. And then also all the ways you could multiply to make 15. And you would have to kind of manipulate those and try one, and if it didn't work, try something else. So there's a lot of combinations there. Okay, something more like this one, there's not too many ways to multiply to make 9 or too many ways to multiply to make 4, but there are a lot of ways to multiply to make 15 and 12. Okay, so this would be an example. If we tried to do this with guess and check, this would probably take you a lot longer, whereas this method really gets you directly there, even if you have to go through and make your list for the 180. And again, just to double check yourself, 2x times 6x would give you the 12x squared. Then you're going to have 10x minus 18x. So 10 minus 18 gives you the negative 8. And then negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. So you can always check with FOIL to make sure that your numbers worked out correctly. Okay, so you're going to try some of these for homework tonight. Feel free to refer back to this video as you need to. Make sure you're looking back at your examples just to remember what your steps are. And we'll take questions on this in class when I see you next.